keep safe, and we'll come back to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Max Keiser is in Paris, the financial analyst and broadcaster. Max, Ashraf Shannon on the ground in Gaza telling us that the economy destroyed in Gaza, even as so many lives have been destroyed. Someone, though, I understand, is making money out of the killing of children.
Well, Afshin, if Gaza City had bought a few $100 billion worth of collateralized debt obligations from Goldman and JP Morgan, they would be getting a bailout from Israel and America instead of getting bombed. Their mistake was they didn't participate in the global Ponzi scheme, which, by the way, has one of its main centers, the Tel Aviv banking center. Yeah, I noticed that the UK pound is dropping. The US dollar has been weak, relatively speaking, whereas the Israeli shekel has been holding up pretty well. I would imagine that the international money laundering syndicates that we've seen operating in the UK and the US have moved operations to Tel Aviv. So I think a lot of what we're seeing on the front of violence is a bit of an operation to deflect attention from a lot of the money laundering, of course, that goes on and has moved away from the UK and the US because those banks are experiencing a different kind of holocaust. It's a financial holocaust. We saw evidence today of Bank of America getting a $138 billion bailout from America's taxpayers. If you go back a few months, what happened was the Bank of America bought the very toxic Merrill Lynch and all of their off-balance sheet, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of collateralized debt obligations and other fraudulent pieces of paper. They assumed those debts, and as a bank now, they're eligible for bailout money from the federal government. And now, instead of simply declaring themselves bankrupt and the bankers being punished for their crimes, they're getting a huge multi-hundred billion dollar paycheck. So that's a financial holocaust happening at the same time as this tragic holocaust we're seeing in Palestine. And it's amazing that it's being perpetrated by the same folks who escaped a holocaust only to perpetrate a holocaust. So it's the psychology is amazing. It's people who are children of abusive parents grow up to become abusive parents. Here in Israel, we're seeing a state carved out of the aftermath of World War II grow up to become an abusive child of an abusive situation. The psychology is remarkable. The Palestinians are getting absolutely the short end of the global geopolitical stick right now simply because of greed, banking greed, and sadism on the part of the so-called organized governments in the UK, Israel, the US. Shameful, absolutely shameful.
Max, we were watching pictures a little earlier that seemed to show, beyond a doubt, the use of white phosphorus. I understand the only place in the world that makes white phosphorus is in Arkansas, Pine Bluff. But who's paying for this war? We hear so many times that the United States subsidizes Israel, that it's U.S. weapons being dropped, U.S. armaments being dropped on the children and the people of Gaza. I thought the United States was bankrupt. How can it afford all of this, all of these weapons?
Well, first of all, let me reiterate that my views are my views and represent only my views. Now, to get to your question, in terms of the weapons involved and where they're being manufactured, you know, the level of grotesqueness in the defense industry in the U.S. is even used on its own troops. As I pointed out on your show last week or several weeks ago, the company that makes armored vehicles for America's troops in Iraq is being victimized by professional hedge fund and short sellers who are selling the stock naked. The company that makes this armor effectively putting soldiers in Iraq at risk, American soldiers, from American hedge funds who are attacking American companies. So there's a sadism involved here that goes beyond just logical shortcomings. It's Caligula, effectively. Caligula is running the defense policies and economic policies in the U.S., Israel, and the U.K.
And how is the United States getting the money?
Well, it's not a matter of how they get the money. It's a question of who accepts their money. Why anyone would accept a U.S. dollar for anything is beyond me. It's a worthless currency collateralized by trailer parks in Arkansas that have been bought and sold for 10, 20, 30 million dollars a pop. If you do the math and you figure out what the banks on Wall Street collateralize all these trailer parks in the U.S. for, they're trading for hundreds, lots of millions of dollars on, if you work through the math on the derivative markets. So it's just currency that's being fabricated. It's fiat currency. What's amazing is that people